We are going to do a color study, and what that means is we're going to look at value. So from darkest to lightest. We're going to start with gray and black and white, and then we will add one color and talk about how each color can get lighter to darker. We have the regular color wheel here that we're used to seeing. We also have some tints and shades. Tint means we're adding white to a color, and shade means we're adding black to a color. So it can get darker and it can get lighter. This one is actually showing only tint. If we added black, these colors would get much darker. Like a shadow. So that's how we remember the word shade is like shadow. That's when you're adding black. Tint is the opposite. That's when you're adding white. So we need for this project 1.5 pieces of paper. These are good, thick, expensive art paper. This is not free draw paper. If you try to paint on free draw paper, it will make a puddle on your paper and it will start to shred or tear your paper. So the first thing we're going to do on the little piece, the half a piece, is draw a big pumpkin. Try to fill up your whole space. It's kind of like the shape of an oval, except it has a little triangle missing out of the top. All right, then we're going to make our stem sort of a wonky rectangle shape. Remember to draw lightly so that you can erase easily. You're doing yourself a favor, your future self. And then here I'm going to make sort of the shape of a POW symbol. Instead of a rounded cloud shape, we're going to turn that inside out and make the pointy bits facing out. It's like on a cartoon, you'd see somebody say, pow, bam. We're going to make that shape around the bottom of our stem. And everywhere there's a point is where we're going to make sort of a curved line down towards this bottom center area. I'm gonna make it come up and around so that it gives our pumpkin the illusion of being round. I can kind of correct some of these if I don't like where it originally was. As long as I'm drawing lightly, I can easily correct those and erase. So the top portion of our pumpkin is going to be a little more rounded here, like this. And looks like we've got it now. So we want to have the lightest one right here in the front, and then we're going to go darker, darker, darker all the way around back. Same with this way. This direction darker, this direction darker. So we want to have at least 5 total values. So if this is light, and we'll call it, say, 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3, 4 and 4. I could make my stem 5, or I could make this one 5 in the way back, and then maybe I want the stem to be lightest to match the front. Now you're an artist, you get to choose. So as long as you are showing me 5 different value shades, then it's completely up to you if you want the stem to be light to match number 1, or if you want the stem to be dark to match number 5. I'm also going to make the base where this green part here that attaches to the stem, I'm going to make this the same whatever I choose my stem to be. Or maybe I could make it a little bit lighter. Maybe this is 4 to match this one. So dark into light. Now what do I mean by those numbers 1 through 5? The lightest color will be number 1. The darkest color will be number 5. So that means we have 3 different color grays to mix. So if I have 1, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5's our darkest. So let's scoop some over here. This is our number 1. Now, how do we get 2, 3, and 4? I'm going to just do a little bit of black because remember the black will overpower. You need a very little bit of. Okay, now I'm gonna move some of that same color over so that I have a starting point. I know that I want this one to be darker than this one and lighter than this one. Okay, I'm gonna move that one over and add a little bit more black. But right now it looks the same as 5. I don't want it to be that. I want it to be a little bit lighter. This is number 4. To me, that's a little bit lighter, but I could add a smidge more. Okay, now I have 5, 4. To me, 4 and 3 look the same now, so I'm gonna add this a little bit lighter. Three and 4 look a little too close together to me. So I'm going to add a little bit more here. I want this to be a noticeable difference between the colors, okay? If this takes you a while, just know that that is normal. Sometimes mixing the paint takes longer than actually painting. All right, we have 5, 4, 3, and now I want to get 2 a little bit lighter. When you're mixing, we don't want to have enough to paint all the walls. We want to have just enough to paint your pumpkin, okay? So we do not need to have a full puddle the size of number 5. That's something that your neighbor can certainly share with you. That's a lot of paint left. All right, so I have this lighter. 2 is lighter than 3, 3 is lighter than 4, 4 is lighter than 5. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 value shades. Now I'm gonna come back over here to my map. Right now my brush is really loaded up with number 2, so I'm gonna start with this one first, just because I have it globbed up on my brush. So here is number 2, and this one's also number 2. If I spend most of my time mixing, then I need to paint fairly quickly. So 2 reasons. So that I have time to finish this all in one class, and so that my paint doesn't dry up. Because if I have to start all over mixing these all again next class, then I'm probably gonna feel pretty frustrated. These paints will not last a whole week. They will be dry by next class. So I'm gonna be moving very quickly once I get my paint down. I do not want to be sloppy, but I do want to move fast enough that I can finish this pumpkin in one class. Next class we will mix paint again, but it will be with color added. Now I'm going to wipe all this off my brush. I can take a paper towel and wipe all of that off, and then move to white. If you still have gray in your brush, you could easily move on to the darker color, number 3. And look what's happening. My 5 was so over full that it spilled into my number 4. So number 4 is going to be a little bit darker than I wanted it to be. Accidents happen, and we're all human, and we just need to get comfortable with going with the flow. So if something happens, just do your best. I could do 2 things here. I could pull from this little puddle over here and not mix in the darkness, or you could notice what I just did without really saying anything. I just kind of naturally did it. I pulled a little extra darkness into number 1, 2, 3, and I'm actually kind of on the fly making number 3 a little bit darker than I originally had it. Okay, so now I'm gonna use number 3 on both sides so that I've got all of my 3 done. Now I need to move to number 4 next. If you're using the paint while it's still wet, you can kind of go back and fix any mistakes you make, meaning if I have a separate brush ready, I can just dip back into this one and cover up my mistakes. I'm using a more firm brush for this project. We do not want to use the soft floppy brushes. These are better for a watercolor. When you're using thick paint, this is thick tempera. Or if we're using these for acrylic, these are a nicer brush. They're more firm and you have more control over them. I'm gonna do white in the front, number 1, with a brand new brush, but you're gonna notice my 1 shows through. The number 1 showed through. My pencil lines were showing through. So make sure you erase your number 1 before you paint it. And notice that I switched to a brand new clean brush to do my number 1 so that my white is a pure white and it's not muddied by any of the other gray colors. So these are a value study. I'm noticing white in the front where the light would be hitting the pumpkin. It's getting darker and more shadowed, more shade. I don't want any white in my number 5, so I'm going to do a pure black here. If you want to have more than 5 colors, you certainly can, but you need to have at least 5 different values. Right now I do have 1 through 5, but if I if I had extra time, or if you're an advanced painter, you might be able to make more values in between. You could kind of work up here on the in between these 2. You can pull some paint up from each to blend them together. If I've already done my number 3, and my number 3s, I don't have any more 3s on my paper. I don't need this, so I can go darker into this little pan. It's a little bit darker than this one, but not fully black. Okay, I want to do the same thing back here. Now I want to get a little bit darker, but not fully black. Back here. And I want to bring this down. Don't try to fill a small space with a big brush. You're going to end up making lots of mistakes and get very frustrated. So make sure you're switching to a very small brush for those very small spaces. We are doing solid value in those areas, but if you want to get a little creative on your stem and do some mixture, you can do that on your stem area. But the other areas of the pumpkin should be a solid gray, okay? We're going to cut out around this after when it's dry. Here is my finished value study of a pumpkin. If you're an artist who wants a more round pumpkin, you could make yours more of a square shape instead of an oval shape, or a circle shape. You could even make your pumpkin with the stem at the top if yours is a long, tall pumpkin, a long, skinny one. It's completely up to you. You do not have to make yours long and squat like mine is. The next thing we're going to do is make a landscape. Most of our landscape will be covered up by the pumpkin, so we don't have to do too much detail in the background. I might just do a few hills and a line for the farm, the field. So here we have an example: background, middle ground, and foreground. Our pumpkin might be actually foreground because it's so big. If you're an advanced artist and you want to push your range of values a little bit further, you could have a 6th space, which would make 5 lines. But what we all want to have is at least 4 lines. Remember that your pumpkin's going to be taking over most of the space, so you don't have to do too much background detail. If you wanted to add some hay or a tree or whatever in the background, you certainly can. But the main part, we're going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 sections. The middle one will be the pure hue. That means your color in its pure form. No white, no black. Then as we go up, we're going to be doing a tint of the original hue and a lighter tint, and then the lightest tint. 1, 2, 3 tints, and then 2 shades. So from the original color hue, then the next one, as I go lower and lower, it's going to be darker and darker. So a shade of that color and a shade of that color, or the bottom one could be pure black. When we go to mix our colors, we need to make sure that we start with the middle section, because that's the pure hue. You could choose any color you want. I happen to choose blue on this example. Then I'm going to add a little bit of white to the blue, and the next one's a little bit lighter, more white. Then from the hue, pure hue down, I'm going to add a little touch of black, so it's a shade of the color, and then more black or pure black would be fine as well. Okay, so whether or not you choose to do your color on the pumpkin or on the background, your job is to have 1 through 5 or more in grayscale, and 5 or more tints and tones and shadows. Shade, tone, hue, tint. So I made an example of a grayscale background and doing my color study on the pumpkin, just to switch it up. So if you want to reverse things, that is okay. You are the artist, you get to choose. When you're cutting out your pumpkin, remember to go in all of those little bumps and grooves so that it makes it look really rounded and 3-dimensional. Now when you glue it on, I want you to use a wet glue, and I want you to add just a little bit, tiny little trail of glue all the way around the edge. And then make sure you've got it up in the air above where you want to place it, so you can figure out exactly where you want it. And then when it's just right, drop it down and press. Make sure that both your pumpkin and your landscape background are completely dry before you cut and glue. So you can see 2 different examples. This one is horizontal with a grayscale background and a colorful pumpkin. This one is vertical with a colorful background and a grayscale pumpkin. I also did a different color background to show you that whatever color you choose for your color study is up to you. You get to choose 1 color. I want to see tints, a pure hue, tone, and shade. I want to see pure white, pure black, and 3 different various tones or shadows or values of gray. And the rest you can have some creativity with. Whether you want your lines to be straight or you want some jagged mountains in your landscape, that is up to you. You can even add bushes or trees in there as well. So have fun, be creative, make it your own, and just remember that you need to have 5 or more sections on your pumpkin and 5 or more sections on your background. All right, have fun.